Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first live broadcast of the DVC show. We'll call this the coronavirus edition of the DVC show. I'm your host, Pete Werner, joined in the room this week by my good friend, Sean Falk.
Hi.
Jerry Saito from the DVC store.
Hello.
Paul Krieger joining us on his first show.
Hey, everybody.
And, of course, running everything from his little lair deep underground somewhere in Celebration is our associate producer, Corey Fiasconaro.
Welcome home.
So, I've said in previous shows, this is kind of the new normal, at least for the time being, of how we're going to do our shows. We thought since we're going to record our shows this way, we might as well do them live. This particular show for DVC, we do want to talk about what's going on. We are going to do a Q&A Wednesday night, a DVC Q&A Wednesday night with everybody. So please be sure to tune in for that. We'll be doing that live as well. But for this particular show, I wanted to address the impact that this is having on DVC. Obviously, with all the resorts closed, nothing is going on, right? Disney World is done, or not done. Let me not say that. Disney World is shut down. Everything is quiet. People are asking, understandably, when they're going to be able to start booking their reservations. There's a lot of questions about people. Right now, Disney has only said they're closed through the end of the month. We all know that's not going to be the case. And people are concerned about their reservations in early April. And, if they cancel those, are they going to be able to bank those points or those points not go into holding? So I want to talk about all that stuff. But first, want to give a shout out to our sponsor, DVCstore.com. And just to say, this is a great time right now. A lot of people looking to rent out their points. This is a great time to take advantage of that 7 to 11 month window for those harder to get resorts. So you can head over to DVCstore.com and check that out there, or give them a call, 1-800-550, help me out, Jerry.
6493.
6493. 1-800-550-6493. You'd think I'd have that committed to memory at this point. But Jerry, talk to me about, where you guys are at right now. I know that you're feeling the same thing that the rest of us are feeling from a business standpoint with this.
Yeah, it's extremely slow, obviously, for obvious reasons. But people are still calling. They are looking to potentially make reservations, but they have questions. They want to know, when's Disney going to reopen? And that's a question nobody really knows at this point, obviously till the end of the month. But there are people wanting to book in April. We're trying to, discourage that. But again, business has been slow, but there are still inquiries for rentals and even for sellers, for buyers. But a lot of questions people just don't have answers to.
And, one of the things that, again, I'm still, a lot of us are still new to DVC. You've been at this now for how many years, Jerry?
This is my 20th year.
20th year. Okay. So you've been through 9/11. You've been through recessions. One of the common things that I've heard are really that during recessions, the prices really go down. That's a great time to buy. I have a lot of people speculating about that right now because of the hit the economy is going to take as a result of what's going on. Is there any truth to that?
In my experience, there's been ebbs and flows in the market. It'll adjust, slightly on the upside when supply is limited, demand is high, prices tend to go up. When supply is available, obviously prices tend to go down. Or in Disney's right of first refusal. But through the like the 9/11, yeah, we were extremely slow for like 2 months, and then things just went back to normal once things, people felt safe and secure, and so that issue kind of was difficult for 2 months, and then it worked itself out. The 2008 market crash and then the housing market failure, again, prices they didn't really go down too much. They kind of stayed relatively steady, and then they went back up. I mean, the ebbs and flows tend to be with right of first refusal. That really affects how market is going to adjust. If Disney's not buying anything back, prices just tend to drop. But as Disney raises their prices, prices tend to go up on the resale. So, and if Disney steps in and buys them back, so this is something I've never obviously experienced of what's going on.
Yeah, none of us have.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting when things turn around, if they turn around, when they turn around, whatever, how it'll affect the market. I mean, it didn't really affect the market too much when those other issues happened. So Disney's resilient. People love Disney. They're going to come back. But it's just how will this particular situation affect the market? I just don't know.
Well, there was something we talked yesterday, you and I, Jerry, about this, and you mentioned that the question is, how much is Disney going to buy back, and that's going to really will ultimately dictate where these prices go. If Disney stops buying back, these prices are going to drop. And one of the things that got me thinking is that Disney Vacation Club is in the same business umbrella as Adventures by Disney, Disney Cruise Line, and Alani. All three of which are being hit much, much, much harder than Walt Disney World is right now. Adventures by Disney has canceled all of their adventures through April. I think the Italy and a few others have been canceled through May now. Disney Cruise Line is simply not sailing, and Alani just closed. Alani just announced that they're closing. So I wonder if that's where are they going to put are they with the resources that they're going to have? Not that they're running out of money, but with the resources that they have, are they going to direct that toward buybacks? I don't know. I don't know how I don't know. What does anybody else think? What does anybody else think is going to happen with this?
I would say my general assumption is that they're going to be spending money in other places in terms of focusing on buying back contracts via right of first refusal. My question becomes concerns about the future resorts. So what's going to happen with Reflections? Are we going to see that date begin to push out further? Because we can assume that Riviera sales are hurting by this. We can assume that there's going to be issues related to all of that. So we would, in my mind, I would assume that Riviera is going to take longer to sell. Reflections is going to push out further. What's going to happen to the Disneyland Tower property?
Yeah.
It's prime on the cutting block, in my opinion. Of it hasn't broken ground yet. It's still moving through permitting and all of that kind of stuff. So there's some real questions about where things are going to move. But going back to what you guys were talking about a little bit ago regarding pricing and right of first refusal and the market, a lot of chatter on Disboards and some of the DVC forums out there has been moving in a direction of, this can be argued, but the economy is not stacked up on broken bonds and loans and things like that happened during the last financial crisis. True. So this might just be a blip that might affect us for a couple months, but we may not see such a downslide over that period of time. But we're not going to know that for at least a couple months or so. We're seeing some contracts move through right of first refusal, seeing what Disney's going to do, and go from there.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about the construction, because I remember after 9/11, they were building. They had already started building expansions for Pop Century in 2001 before that happened, And then they were also getting ready to announce another theme park right before 9/11, and of course that got scrapped. The theme park got scrapped. They never announced it, and then the expansion to Pop Century stayed empty for years. We used to call it Sarajevo because it was just the shell of a building, right? That was supposed to be another Pop Century. I think it ended up becoming part of Art of Animation, but that wasn't until years later. So I think, your point's well taken. I mean, Sean, what do you think? Do you think they're going to impact, it's going to impact Reflections and the Disneyland Tower, or do you think they have to move forward with those things to recover?
I mean, I don't. It's weird because DVC, especially if I were them, the thing I'd move forward with is the California Tower, because it's guaranteed to do well and it's guaranteed to sell out. So if they're needing money, as far as thinking of it as being in a whole umbrella of, if the same pool of money as DVC, Aulani, Disney Cruise Line, and forget the other. But as long Adventures by Disney,
Adventures by Disney,
pool, they are going to have to divert funds to other places. Aulani can open up back up pretty well. So really, the big hits are against. I think Cruise Line is the one to take the biggest hit because I don't know exactly what's happening if they're having to pay port fees wherever their ships are docked right now, and it's a lot of staff. It's a lot of. It's just not as easy with Cruise Line to just up and turn around and say, okay, everyone's back to work or everyone's this. So many of those people are from other countries, and so many need to be trained in so many areas compared to new DVC stuff. So I feel like Disney Vacation Club will be on the back burner a bit, but Disney's always been really good about running each thing separately. So even Magic Kingdom has to rent the right to use Disney Music because they just divide things really well, and I've always liked that about them. If Magic Kingdom can't just go get stuff from Epcot and bring it over,
right,
merchandise or whatever. And because they run each thing like its own separate entity, it's really easy to build one thing up or possibly cut one leg off if they need if there's such a problem. So
I think, and I think you're right. Yes, you're correct in that all the business units operate as individual businesses. So DVC runs as its own business, APD, DCL, but also within those, like you were talking about the Magic Kingdom, every cart is technically considered its own business, right? Every quick service restaurant is considered its own business. And so let's take a look at that then. Let's take a look at DVC as its own entity. You take a look at the fact that even before this, Riviera sales were challenging. Pete Shiley did that amazing write-up, taking a look at where the numbers were, and that it was soft to begin with because of the resale restrictions, which I think if there's ever been an argument for those to go away, it's now. Because let's say nothing changes in the resale market. Let's say prices remain right where they've been. They were having trouble selling Riviera before. In any kind of economic downturn, those sales are going to crater. And it's going to look a lot more attractive for people to come in through resale. A lot more attractive, even if the prices don't go down. And so I think they're going to be hit there hardest. And I think, Sean, you're right that the Disneyland Tower, they could tell you have to wear red on Tuesday for the rest of your life as part of the restrictions of buying there, and people are all in, and that thing is going to sell out at record speed because of the pent-up demand that there is in California. Anybody who's ever tried to get a reservation at the Grand Californian with their points that doesn't own there and isn't booking 11 months out knows what I'm talking about. There is an enormous pent-up demand there. So I think that's likely what's going to happen. I think you're going to see construction maybe scale back or the time frame on Reflections scale back. But I don't think you're going to see any impact. I can't imagine them not moving forward with the Disneyland hotel tower, because I think Reflections becomes the new Sarajevo.
Well, I agree with what Paul was saying, and it's something that's come up a lot on our real estate side, is the whole idea of what exactly happens to the economy. It's not been a situation like it was in 2008, where the economy isn't failing because of the bad economy, essentially. I guess if that
or bad loans, yeah.
It's not because of bad loans and bad financing and stuff. I understand why things like the real estate market took a hit, because the real estate market was the catalyst of the last recession. Like, it was a lot of bad loans that were going out, and much of that was from, real estate, which Disney Vacation Club falls under real estate for a lot of it. So, it's going to depend on what exactly happens with the economy. If things bounce back, like, even by the end of April, at this point, I know everyone's home and everyone's nervous, but I mean, at least the majority of people I know haven't lost their job yet. Like, so it's not a thing of where they're behind yet. Like, it is looking like it's going to be on the horizon, but they're not. People aren't out like they were in 2010 kind of situation, where it's like, okay, I've been out of a job for the last year, can't find one, and I've got 3 homes I'm trying to pay mortgages on. So it doesn't seem to be that situation yet. So
it's all going to depend. It's all really going to depend on when this turns around, right? The Wall Street Journal this morning was citing sources inside of the government saying they're bracing for a second quarter unemployment rate approaching 30%, which was what we saw, like worse than what we saw during the Great Depression in the 30s. Now, I think I hope that is grossly overstated. The same way, you see these reports that are saying that millions of people could die from the coronavirus, and that's true, provided absolutely nothing is done, right? If we went about living our lives the way we always did right now, then yes, the death rate would be up. But look, here we are, we're 5 people, and where are we? We are in our houses, and I've been hunkered down here for a little while now. I think we all have.
Yeah. Personally, I've been doing self-quarantine distancing for over a week now, since
you were 15.
Yeah, since I was 15. But I think a big part of it is like you look at places like Miami Beach. I mean, the sooner we all get on not that page, the better. But as the people that are all still partying on beaches and stuff like that and doing things of that nature is what's going to ultimately create more cases and postpone this longer. So the sooner we all realize...
Well, this is why I encourage people to really brush up on natural selection. Because if you're out, like, you see like in New York this weekend, there were huge crowds. And out in California, there were huge crowds on the beach. I've always said it, there's a fine line between accident and natural selection. And right now, if you don't want to listen to what's being said, then you can't wonder why. If God forbid you get this illness, and God forbid you die, people can't wonder why, because you were warned. You were warned. But enough of that. Let's not go down that rabbit hole. But so it really, really does depend on when this turns around. Now, another thing I read this morning, and again in the Wall Street Journal, was that they're looking at they're starting to see that the worst cases, the worst outbreaks are happening in places that are dry and cool, and that they're thinking that this is going to follow the same pattern as other coronaviruses, where as heat and humidity build up, the virus dies off, which is great, because that means, because it's the end of March now, and here, at least in Florida, we're looking at, we're right around the corner from sauna weather. But then they're saying that it's going to come back in the fall. But it would at least give us the summer to get prepared and be better prepared than we were for this. So it's one of the questions a lot of people are asking is, I've got a reservation the beginning of April. Are they going to let me cancel it? Once they announce, wait until they announce that they are keeping the resorts closed. Then they will honor it. That's one thing that we can say for Disney right now. They have not screwed over their guests. They are allowing people to cancel without penalty. They are allowing people to change like on Cruise Line, they're allowing people to change reservations or cancel and get all their money back, even if they're within the cancellation window, as long as they've announced that. So you've got a lot of people saying, oh, my reservation in October, oh, what am I going to do? Nothing. You do nothing right now. You wait. I feel like I'm on a Larry David episode right now. You wait. Look it up. But that, and that's it, because you get the panic, right? You've got this crazy panic, which I completely get. This is scary. So you have people saying, oh, I have to cancel my December trip. Well, we don't know what we're looking at next week, let alone in December. So you've got nothing to lose by just waiting. Just waiting. And then once Disney, because if you cancel now for December, well, you're going to pay whatever penalties there are for a reservation, which I don't think there's anything right now. Whether it's a package cruise or there are no penalties for it. But I'm going to tell you, as sure as I sit here, there are going to be people that react by canceling something later in the year and then are going to regret it and not be able to get it back. Because the other thing I'm going to tell you is, this is why I'm, suggesting this is a great time to do that 7 to 11 month point rental thing. Because once this shifts, the pent up demand is going to absorb all availability. Trust me on this. It's going to be on Cruise, it's going to be on World, it's going to be DVC. A lot of people, myself included, a lot of people are talking about how much we took this all for granted until it closed. That we could go whenever we wanted, right? Especially DVC members. We're DVC members 2-3 times a year in a lot of cases. We took it for granted. Now that it's gone, we're appreciating it more. I would go weeks without ever stepping foot on property. I live a half an hour away. All I want to do right now is go onto property.
Yeah, I mean,
so there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand. So if you want, again, I would take advantage of that now. This is a great time to rent those points. And yes, I am plugging DVC Store. It's a great time to rent those points for that 7 to 11 month window. Did Fiasco, you were going to say something?
Yeah.
Or Jerry, yeah.
You go ahead, Jerry.
Jerry, yeah. I was going to say, for sellers, like, again, if you were on the fence of selling, considering maybe it's time to get out, again, that's that pent up interested buyer who's now going to have an opportunity to potentially go and they're going to be ready to spend money when this turns around. So I would say, if you're looking to sell as well, now's a good time to list it, just to see, hopefully things turn around quickly, but listing might not be a bad idea, because those buyers are going to be ready to buy when it's time.
Yeah, I mean,
so Jerry, have you?
Mind if I?
Go ahead, PS.
Yeah. So,
and then
you got to think right now. Like if you have a vacation plan for, let's say, October, let's say, you got to think of the people who had their vacations cut short here in March, but then also are missing out on their vacation next month in April and maybe even May. Those people a lot of them are going to want to look to plan another date when they're able to do so. So that is going to drastically increase people going the time that you're going to go. So if you drop a trip in October, then somebody might be picking that trip up.
Go ahead, Paul.
What I was going to say is that the renting debate brings up a big question on a lot of DVC people's minds right now, which is what's going to happen to their points. DVC, probably in the time that we've been on here, has changed their exact mindset on that again. But originally, the primary thing that they did was they got rid of holding accounts. So essentially, if you canceled your trip, or if your trip was affected by the closure, holding accounts were gone. Your points moved back. The problem, and where we begin to get into some issues, is borrowed points. So if you borrowed points from the next use year and moved them for your trip now, DVC originally was moving points back to that use year if you canceled, but then they said, whoa, that's going to cause some issues. So right now their main statement appears to be if you cancel because of the closure, so if essentially you can't go, then they will move your points back to that borrowed use year. But if you're canceling just out of fear of the unknown or not wanting to go, they're now saying that they're not going to move those points.
And I think
back.
I think that's totally fair. I really do. I think people that are planning to travel in the next couple of months have a right to be concerned. But if you're talking like, look, I've talked about this before. I've got a bunch of rooms at the boardwalk for December, for my mother's 90th birthday. I have no intention of canceling those. If we're supposed to check in, I think on the 8th. On December 7th, if we have a problem, I'll cancel. Or maybe December 1st, but I'm certainly not going to cancel in March. And I don't think I should be given any consideration. If I'm going to overreact to panic, I don't think I should be given consideration because of that. It may piss a few people off. I'm sorry, but people who are traveling right now in the next couple of months, I get it. I understand that anxiety. But if you're traveling in December and you're feeling that anxiety, then there's something wrong. And we just have to take a wait and see.
Now, the last point that is being brought up a lot, that is the biggest concern by a lot of DVC members, are those that banked points from last year into this use year. And those individuals, if they are getting near the end of their use year and they are affected by this cancellation, DVC's standpoint as of this moment is that they are not going to change any banking rules. So those people have the potential for actually losing those points. The last statement that I saw Disney Vacation Club put on their website was that they were looking into this, but they'd not made a full determination on what to do with those points. Because if you actually let those banked points move forward, or if you say, okay, we'll let them ride into this use year, or move them, or you can even bank them into another use year, then you're putting so much stress on the system. You're going to have a jillion points out there, and you're going to have 10 rooms. And what do you do in that case? So there's people that, go ahead.
Jerry, you might be able to answer this, but there's legality around how points are allocated, when they're allocated, and what's done with them. So could that be, when they say they're looking into it, again, no one ever, I think, no one had a pandemic plan, right, including apparently our government, but nobody had a pandemic plan here. So is that what this is? Is this a legality issue?
So I don't really know, to be honest with you. I do know that, just like Paul had mentioned, that many reservations that we had booked, let's say expire April 1st, points expire April 1st because they were banked points that were expiring. We had to cancel those reservations, and those points are lost. We can't, there's no way to extend it. The member had a reservation confirmed, and then it's gone now. So I don't know how Disney's going to handle that. I don't know if there's a legal issue. Like you said, there's no pandemic clause. So this, and it would totally flood the system, as Paul mentioned, if they extended those bank points. So it's a mess. I don't know what or how Disney's going to handle that.
The most creative way that I've read about online that some members are handling it is considering moving points into the RCI exchange, which gives you apparently an extra 2 years to use those points. But the problem I view with that is that the RCI exchange is just that. Yeah, so first you have to choose a good resort with RCI, which is hard to come by. But secondly, the RCI is an exchange. So essentially, you move your points into there. Well, now RCI people can move into DVC rooms. So DVC runs into the same problem. So if we see an influx of people starting to do that, I see DVC throwing their hands up and going, well, we're going to stop the RCI exchange for now, because again, you're still going to put that same stress on the system.
So I have a question.
Well,
that might help some other people. They might have the same question I have. So I had a little staycation planned, as many people probably had vacations planned in April, which I dropped off earlier, like last week, and my points went back into 2019's point balance. What would probably be the best solution for somebody like me? Should I just go ahead and book a trip for later in the year or something, just to have, because my I have to bank or use by July. So should I just plan something now then, you think?
So this is I guess unshameful plug, but I was having this conversation with Ken Martin actually last night over on Facebook. And Ken brought up the idea that he was going to cancel his DVC stays for this year and bank all of those points into next year due to the unknown that we're sitting around right now. And basically said he was going to call up Sean and book any planned travel with Dreams Unlimited for the remainder of this year, because there's just, if you actually just don't want to have to deal with the unknown of what's going on, that's a safe bet of preserving your points, not being affected by all of these changing parameters that DVC doesn't seem to know what they're doing.
I appreciate the plug, and we'll take the business. Absolutely, if somebody wants to do that. But I just... First of all, I just want to say that one thing Disney has been horrible about through this whole thing is communication. DVC needs to come out and say, this is what we're doing. And they need to be answering these questions, and they need to be answering them publicly. The company as a whole, with the exception, the sole exception of Disney Cruise Line, and only because cruises were such a central part of the spread of this illness and in the news all the time. But with the exception of Disney Cruise Line, none of the other business units within Disney have been very forthcoming with information. And DVC needs to address these publicly. The ship has sailed. The words coronavirus and Disney are being mentioned in the same sentence now, along with every other business. And because I'm telling you right now, that's why the communication has been so bad. They didn't want the words coronavirus and Disney in the same sentence. And I know that for a fact. I know it for a fact. And, those are the moments. I love working with these guys. I really do. But there are times. I have a glass desk here. I'm surprised it's not broken from me bashing my head into it. They need to get in front of this stuff now. Because what's going to happen, as bad as this situation is, especially for DVC, having a member revolt on top of it, because you're not providing information, you're not telling them what you're doing or what you're going to do, you're not making any assurances that we will act in our members' best interest, we will find creative ways to solve this problem. Terry Schultz needs to step up. She needs to step up, and she needs to lead and tell her people what she's going to do. Because right now, all of this speculation is coming because there is an absence of communication coming from management at DVC. And that needs to change.
I mean, I felt the opposite. I mean, I thought that, as far as being a travel agent and all that, I mean, I feel like Disney has been really great with their communication. They've always given pretty clear answers to me. Anytime I've called in, I've never gotten double talk from people. I've always just been told this is what's going on as far as we know. And I mean, the other side of it, I mean, there's nothing DVC or any cruise line or any of these places can say. I mean, they don't know when things are going to open up. They don't know. I mean, even now, like they had signed in that Florida restaurants and all that are going to be closed for sit-down stuff until May 8th. So what really can they say? I mean, they can't reopen it. Even if the pandemic ended tomorrow, if they can't reopen restaurants, I don't know exactly what that means for Disney. And
I'm not talking.
It just feels like a very, it feels like a very first world problem to be like, hey, like, you know, like this is a luxury item. It's not like some like life or death thing. And so it just feels very like, I get it. Like it sucks that that's what's going on. But if people's first priority on this is like, you know, the members are going to stand up and revolt because like our points aren't, you know, we're not getting addressed about our points. That seems like really far to me.
I don't think it is. Honestly, I don't think it is at all. When, you know, you invested so much money in this and you just want to know what's happening. Mm-hmm. And, you know, to say we're looking into it is one thing, but you have to answer some of these questions. I think people have a right to have those answers. And I'm glad you felt that Disney's communication was so good. From my standpoint, these people didn't want to make any public pronouncements. The first public pronouncement Disney made about coronavirus was they were closing the parks. When every other business, every other travel business, the airlines were ahead of them on this. The single only business unit within Disney that was talking about it openly was Cruise Line. World, Land, ABD, DVC, nobody said a word. Nobody said a word until they announced they were closing the parks. And they were the last major travel company to do it. So I don't think maybe their communication was definitely better internally with travel agents, but in terms of their communication with their guests, they were terrible, in my opinion. So.
Well, and Pete, to your point, what we've seen in terms of communication put out by Disney Vacation Club is that they'll put something up on like the member dashboard or on their website that they've now designated for it. But then Terry Schultz will come out with an email that'll go out to all membership, and it'll be slightly different and clarifying a point on that. So they've not been very consistent on that. And what's even worse is that I don't know if any of us have been directly affected in terms of a vacation yet, but you have people whose vacation is affected by the closure who are calling member services, and from one member services rep to the next, they don't even know their own policies right now. They're going to get a manager who then has to clarify what banking borrowing rules are applying at this current moment. And so there's very little clarity. Even I've heard cases where someone has canceled because of fear of the coronavirus, and they have gotten their banked points moved back, or they've gotten their borrowed points moved back. And then another person calls and, no, where our banking and borrowing rules are still in place. And there's just no consistency related to any of that.
Yeah, and we're seeing that with Disney Cruise Line as well internally, that there's been a lot of, I think it's gotten better in the last few days, but when this and I understand that confusion because we were all really broadsided by this, so I'll give them some slack on that, but these questions need to get answered, and no, it's not life or death, but it is important to people. It is important to people who've invested money in this, and this matters to them. And they want to know and I realize all of us want to know when this ends. Well, we don't. And we're going to have to be okay with not knowing. We're going to have to be okay with not knowing some things. But that shouldn't extend to things like DVC. We shouldn't have to be okay with not knowing. what's going to happen to our points? What's going to happen? If this, what are you going to do, and what can you do? And if there is a legal issue, come out and say so. Come say there's a come out and say there's a legality issue, but communicate that to us. So,
do you think that they should compensate for these banked points that potentially will be lost? I mean, in terms of the contracts in general, they could, in the end, just throw their hands up and say, well, I mean, it's part of how things are going. But I mean, then.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I don't think they should. I mean, I think it's something. I mean, if you banked, like, yeah, you banked, like, that's it. I mean, it's a situation of, you've had a lot of time at this point to use those. I do get it where there are some people who specifically buy just to bank. They'll buy a very small amount to bank and borrow from one year to the next to do one vacation every few years or whatever it is. The only ones that I would personally give consideration to are people who just bought their membership. Like if you bought direct and just bought like Riviera, or not Riviera, but one of the other ones, and then you got the back. So like if you got your 2019 points or whatever with it and you've not done your trip yet, I would think Disney would probably give consideration to those because they haven't even gotten to use them yet. These were not banked by their own choice, that just kind of came along with it. But beyond that, I mean, that's just how it works. And I mean, it's just the same as if there was a hurricane or whatever else. So I don't think I would give them back.
Jerry, what do you think?
So, I mean, in years past, Disney sometimes has offered like developer points where they actually have inventory, and let's say somebody lost some points or something happened, they would offer developer points and put those back into somebody's account. So that could be a possibility. But again, like Paul was saying, it could completely flood the the resorts because now there's people with surplus points available. So Disney does make concessions, and they do try to help their members the best they can. But again, this is a situation that I don't think they planned for, and nobody really knows when this will end and how far this will go. So I don't know what's going to happen in the end, but I've seen them do developer points where they have put people's points back for whatever reason.
We know that DVC by the timeshare laws have to hold back a certain amount of points for cash reservations. Do we think, or does that law give them any flexibility there, where we could potentially see those cash rooms be turned into rooms for people to, again, if we flood the system with points? Another thought that people threw out there was Riviera is sitting on huge cash inventory right now. So can DVD or DVC sort of say, we're going to use all of this inventory that we have here that is not yet allocated?
I would highly doubt that, because the law is so strict with timeshares in Florida regarding the number of rooms they have to hold back for cash. I don't know that they have a tremendous amount of leeway there. They would have to get a special dispensation from the legislature, I would think, in order to do that. I don't think there's any other way for them to get around that. That's why I don't know with the banked points issue, if that's something that has a legal basis in terms of how points can be allocated, and that, I mean, it's a very, very involved process with timeshares in Florida in particular. So I don't know what the laws are regarding that. So there may be a law that prevents them from protecting banked points or giving points back for certain things. I don't know, but that's what we need to hear. We need to hear what's the situation with that. So, all right, before we wrap, anybody else have anything they want to add?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about this, and like Jackie Gailey's in the chat right now, and she said she had a little 2-night stay booked. I as well had a little staycation next month. I mean, thinking about it, just in the situation, if you're in a situation where you can't bank your points for some reason because maybe you borrowed them and DVC hasn't been clear yet. And I should also say that what I think that DVC could do, and I don't think it would be too much to ask, and I think it would make people feel a lot better, just, you know, a little FAQ blog that they can post the most frequently concerning, the most frequently asked questions, and their responses to that. I think that'd be great. A great response to this. But in that situation where you did borrow points and you don't know if you'll be able to bank them, I'd honestly just plan that trip again later down the line. That's what I think I might do anyways. But I think, and if something comes out later, great, and you should be still able to adjust some dates, but to be safe and not lose your points.
Just I had 4 nights at the boardwalk scheduled for the end of this month that I canceled. Got my points back without a problem because it was within that cancellation period for, the coronavirus, the adjusted rules. And it's a little different for you and I, Fiasco, in that, we live here, right? Yep. We're able to do that. My heart goes out to the people who were planning a vacation, especially, as was mentioned before, the folks who bought the small point contracts where they will borrow, you bank and you borrow to make that, once every 3-year trip. Those people affected by this, I really hope they're taken care of. I really hope that they are taken care of.
Yeah.
But it's a matter to be seen. But we are going, as I mentioned before, we are going to do a live Q&A on Wednesday night. We'll say, what sounds good, guys? 7 o'clock?
Sure. Yeah.
7 p.m. Wednesday night. We'll do a live Q&A and talk some more about all things DVC. So that is going to do it for this episode of the DVC show. We hope you enjoyed it. We will see you again Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Bye-bye.